The meeting of the Aurora City Council for Monday, December 19th, 2022 is called to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Kaufman.
Here.
Councilmember Bergen.
Here.
Councilmember Coombs.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Gardner.
Here.
Councilmember Drinsky.
Here.
Councilmember Lawson.
Here.
Councilmember Marcano.
Present.
Councilmember Medina.
Here.
Councilmember Murillo.
Present.
Councilmember Sundberg.
Here.
And Councilmember Zvonek.
Here.
There's a quorum.
Announcement for the public call-in line.
City Council welcomes feedback from the public on both matters appearing on the agenda and during public invited to be heard. If you would like to speak and have not already spoken to an operator, please press star 3. For those watching on Channel 8, call 855-695-3475 and press star 3 when connected. You will hear a prompt confirming you are in line to speak to an operator and then be able to continue listening to the meeting. When the operator comes on the line, please be ready to give them your name and the agenda item you wish to speak on. Keep in mind you must press star 3 before the city clerk reads the title of the item you wish to speak on. Finally, as a reminder, council does not allow comments about any items on the agenda during public invited to be heard. Each speaker is allowed 3 minutes, and public invited to be heard is limited to 1 hour in total.
El Consejo Municipal invita a todos los residentes a dar su opinión en estas reuniones municipales, tanto en los asuntos que aparecen en la agenda como en la sección de invitación al público al ser escuchado. Tenemos interpretación al español, a todas las personas que han decidido venir de manera presencial. La señorita Gaby, ¿puedes levantar? Si alguna persona necesita interpretación, por favor, venir a buscar equipo, y las personas que vengan al micro tienen 3 minutos para hablar en frente al Consejo Municipal. Muchísimas gracias.
Please join me in an invocation. O Lord, our God and our Father, we come to you and we ask that you would look upon this particular gathering tonight to keep us safe and guide us in our decisions. Unite our community together, even though we come from different backgrounds. We pray that there be justice and peace in our city. Give the City Council and citizens the wisdom, direction, and sensitivity to the business and proceedings before us tonight. Hear us, therefore, as we commit this meeting to the help of the community. Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with justice and justice for all. Executive session update. In executive session, we discussed 2 mineral lease negotiations. At this time, I'd like to read the land acknowledgement. The city of Aurora acknowledges that we gather on the territories and ancestral homelands of the Cheyenne, Ute, Arapaho, and Lakota peoples, past and present. We also recognize the 48 contemporary tribal nations that are historically tied to the lands that made up the state of Colorado. Indigenous peoples have remained committed to the stewardship of this land over many centuries. As these words of acknowledgement are spoken and heard, the ties that these nations have to their traditional homelands and to their vital place in the ecosystem are renewed and reaffirmed, and we are called upon to be better stewards of the land we inhabit as we continue to work to meet the needs of our entire community. Approval of the minutes, November 28, 2022.
Mayor,
Motion
to approve the minutes.
It's moved by Councilmember Sundberg, seconded by
Bergen.
seconded by Councilmember Bergen to approve the minutes of November 28, 2022. Discussion? Seeing none, call for the question.
Mayor Kaufman.
Yes.
Councilmember Coombs.
Yes. Yes.
The motion passes to adopt the November 28, 2022 meeting minutes.
A motion is in order for the approval of the minutes for December 5th, 2022.
Mayor,
Councilmember Bergen.
Move to approve the minutes from December 5th.
Moved by Councilmember Bergen, seconded by
Medina.
Second by Councilmember Coons to approve the minutes of December 5th, 2022. Discussion? Seeing none, call for the question.
Mayor Kaufman,
Yes, Mayor votes yes.
Councilmember Sundberg. The motion passes to adopt the December 5th, 2022 meeting minutes.
Item number 7A, Animal Services, Animal Showcase.
Yay.
We have a special treat tonight.
Hi, everyone. You may have seen, this is Bubbles. He is a dog at the care of the Aurora Animal Shelter. This little guy came into us because of a tip to our animal protection officers. So we got a tip that there was a dog who was maybe not in the best care and asked for us to come out and take a peek. So when we showed up, we found that he was a bit skinny and he was limping on one of his legs. After talking to the family, they admitted that they weren't going to be able to provide him the right care or veterinary care and let us take him to the shelter to do so and find him a home that could give him the care he needed throughout his lifetime. This sweet boy got that little leg amputated so he could live a pain-free lifestyle. We saw after some x-rays that it was already something that he wasn't using mobility-wise, so we wanted to make sure that it was gone and he didn't have to worry about it anymore. We are working on putting on his weight. Hello. He has lived in a home with dogs, cats, and young kids. As you can see, he's very friendly and sociable. So we're just looking for a home that's willing to continue his care, give him a happy tripod lifestyle, and live out the rest of his days.
Do you accept trade-ins? Goodbye. Goodbye, Mookie. You're done? Oh, no. Okay. Thank you very much. I hope this dog is adopted very soon. Public invited to be
We have a
heard.
taker in the audience.
Robbie DeYoung.
Greetings, good evening, hello, howdy. My name is Robbie DeYoung. I am the organizer for stolen and vandalized vehicles in Colorado on Nextdoor. We now have over 1,340 members, and that's increasing, unfortunately, every day. I have multiple things to bring up. I'm going to try and be as quick as I can. I need the council to, at some point, address what is going to happen with the impound lot fees that there are people that have had their car stolen having to deal with. There's one woman that I just talked to the other day. Her car was stolen. It is at the Aurora impound lot, but the Glenwood Police Department is investigating it, and until they get through investigating it, she has to continue paying impound lot fees. That's not fair. That's not fair at all. I need to find out what is going on with the speeding detection devices that we were going to have on the streets, the license plate readers on the streets. What the new police chief is interim police chief is going to be doing about the Kia Boys hit and run and push and grab TikTok challenges. Unbelievable. I'd also like to know what if the city is planning on working with CAPTA to get catalytic converter engravers free to the public. But here's the big one. This box, this little box can save somebody's life. It is very, very important that this become available to everyone in the city of Aurora free. Right now, in order to get this, you either have to have your insurance pay for it or you have to pay upwards of $80. This is called Narcan. If somebody is on the street and you see them and they are having an overdose, this will take care of it. States like Ohio, Delaware, and Iowa all have this free to their citizens. Cities like Philadelphia and Chicago have this free to their citizens. This is a life-saving device. One of the reasons why I'm bringing it up, because of what I do with stolen and vandalized vehicles, often these vehicles are returned to their owners with narcotics in the car. If they come in contact with that and they end up having an overdose because the paraphernalia that's found in stolen vehicles is not removed, they will need this. So this is not just for when you see somebody on the street, but this is for everyone. I thank you for your time, and Merry Christmas, everyone.
And then we do have an individual on the public call-in line.
Alman, go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, everybody. Before I get started, let me just say happy holidays, whether that be Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, or just a Festivus for the rest of us. Now, I'm kind of busy. That's why I'm not there today. Yesterday, I saved some old lady's life walking around on the street, and a couple days from now, I got a mission to help Santa with these last-minute Christmas gifts. So I'm kind of occupied, but don't worry. I left Aurora's gift last week. There's at least one member of your council that already knows what I'm talking about, and there's a couple more that are going to find out. But aside from that, the people that didn't find out, to wake up Christmas morning with that lump of coal in your stocking, I need to remind you of something. Whether you're in the schoolyard or on the council, when you're a bully, you're on the naughty list. So just remember that when you're making decisions later tonight, because I know you got an important one. We'll talk about that later. Till then, take care.
That was the last person.
Mayor,
Councilmember McConnell.
thank you, sir. Could we have the city manager provide an update in response to Ms. Young's comments about how folks can get reimbursed if they've been victimized by motor vehicle thieves in the city of Aurora?
Certainly. So council provided funding of $1 million to offset those storage costs. And so we are in process of implementing that program. That funding is in 2023. So we will be implementing a program to help victims of motor vehicle with both the towing and storage costs. And details of that program will be coming forward shortly, and we'll make them available to council.
Thank you.
Motion is in order for the adoption of the agenda.
So moved.
It's been moved by Councilmember McConnell, seconded by
Coombs.
Councilmember Coombs for the adoption of the agenda. Discussion? Seeing no discussion, call for the question on the adoption of the agenda.
Mayor Kaufman,
Mayor votes yes.
Councilmember Marcano,
I thought I voted yes.
okay, and Councilmember Sundberg. The motion passes to adopt the agenda.
A motion is in order for the adoption of the consent calendar, item number 10A
Mayor.
through 10J. Councilmember Bergen.
Motion to approve 10A through 10J.
It's been moved by Councilmember Bergen, seconded by
Mayor, second.
Councilmember Lawson to approve the consent calendar, item number 10A through 10J. Discussion? Seeing no discussion, call for the question on the adoption of the consent calendar.
Mayor Kaufman,
Mayor votes yes.
Councilmember Sundberg. The motion passes to adopt the consent calendar.
Clerk, now please read the title to item number 11A.
Item 11A is Resolution 2022-236, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Aurora, Colorado, setting forth its desire to pursue a result that would move the hiring process of Aurora Fire Rescue and Aurora Police basic entry-level employees to the Human Resources Department in coordination with Aurora Fire Rescue and Aurora Police by directing the city manager to work cooperatively with the Aurora Civil Service Commission to amend the commission's rules and regulations.
Councilmember Zvonek.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just do a quick introduction and then I'll hand it over to staff. So this resolution directs the city manager to work collaboratively with the Civil Service Commission to intentionally work toward sufficient compliance within the consent decree, specifically the requirements that Aurora HR, along with both Aurora Fire and Rescue and the Police Department, have a more active role in the hiring of basics, and that the departments have a final say on who is hired as a part of the basic process. And so this resolution, again, doesn't prescribe an outcome, but does direct the city manager to work collaboratively with the commission to come up with that outcome, because if we don't, when we get to a point to where, I believe it's in May, we come to a deadline, there's a chance that we could be compelled by a district court judge to do just that. So my hope is to get ahead of it and come up with a process that works for our departments. And with that, I'll hand it over to staff.
Thank you, Councilmember Zvonek. As Councilmember Zvonek stated, ladies and gentlemen, Pete Schulte, Public Safety Client Manager, City Attorney's Office. The consent decree gave us a period of what's 455 days from the date that the contract was signed with the consent decree monitoring team, which was February 15th of this year. So that's a year and 3 months. So Councilmember Zvonek is correct. That gives us a deadline until May 15th of 2023 to complete the changes that are dictated in the consent decree. The two requirements in the consent decree require that, first, that both Aurora Police and Aurora Fire Rescue both have a much more active role in the hiring, and the other item or element of the consent decree was that they have the final say in hiring which candidates are actually hired by those departments. This resolution, just as Councilmember Zvonek stated, doesn't prescribe the manner and means to get to those two results. It just says that that is where it's headed, and how we get there is the updates that will be provided by us to you all in every 60 days to council in full, and every month to public safety. And the only thing that we added, I know that we talked about at the last study session, was as far as the fiscal impact is concerned, as decisions are made by the Civil Service Commission, because as we told them in their meetings, they're the only ones that can change their rules. So when that happens and there are updates on the fiscal note, we'll bring it to either public safety and bring it to Councilmember Zvonek so we can update the entire council on our progress. But again, this is just to kick start it, make sure this is one of the major elements of the consent decree. And if we fail and the Attorney General's office doesn't think that we're going to accomplish it, there's a dispute resolution procedure in the consent decree where we could end up in a district court. As Councilmember Zvonek stated, a district court could prescribe to us what the Civil Service Commission rules could be. So as with everything, it'd be better for us to get it done our way.
Questions of staff?
Mayor.
Councilmember Bargan.
Yes, and from our study session last week, I believe the Civil Service, the chair of the Civil Service Commission was on and stated that some of these things were already in place. So it sounded as though they also understood the importance of meeting that deadline.
Yes, ma'am, and I think one of the things to talk about with the rule changes, what they did with the rule changes, which is a great start. I'm not saying that, I mean, for us to be able, we finally had a hiring report that was put out by the consent decree monitoring team, which kind of gave us another avenue to change our rules to get to the final result. But what they did is they ended up taking away a lot of the mandatory disqualifiers for fire candidates and police candidates, which in essence still gives the Civil Service Commission a lot more files to review. Really didn't make the departments have a more active role or give the departments the final say, but it's great. It was very collaborative. We thought that was great, and so this will continue that process.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions of staff?
Mayor.
Councilmember Gardner.
Thank you. So I'm confused because all I've heard all along is that this resolution doesn't really prescribe anything. All that it does is direct the city manager to work with the Civil Service Commission and the HR department to come into compliance with the consent decree. So how can we say that on one hand, but then on the other hand say that the changes that the Civil Service Commission has started making don't match with this resolution? That there seems to be a disconnect there.
Councilmember Zvonek.
Because the resolution is focused on the two requirements in the consent decree. The two requirements in the consent decree are that HR and the departments will have a greater involvement in the determination of who is hired and the final say. The changes that the Civil Service Commission has made as a result of the hiring report that was put out by the consent decree monitor were needed changes, but not geared towards those. So again, I'm not suggesting that they're not going into this with good faith toward this outcome. I'm happy that they're doing it. It seems like the conversation that we had now maybe a month ago at study session has kickstarted it, but the changes that they made as a result of the presentation from the consent decree monitor are not geared towards the two requirements of the consent decree, which is what this resolution is ultimately directing them to get to.
Further discussion?
Mayor.
Councilmember Coombs.
So I guess for me, the question is really just, isn't this what we were already going to do anyway? And isn't it kind of a foregone conclusion? But because of that, because it doesn't change what we were already going to do anyway, I certainly don't oppose it.
Further questions?
Mayor, just a quick.
Councilmember Zvonek.
Yeah, so the answer to that was, and this is, again, if you listen to the presentation from the consent decree monitor, it wasn't happening. And that's why I decided to bring forward the resolution, was that while May seems like it's far down the road, we have, the consent decree is not a, we should consider this. It's a we have to do this. And this is something for when we're looking at how do we lift our departments from underneath the consent decree. We should look at every opportunity to reach sufficient compliance. And this seemed like very low-hanging fruit, but it wasn't happening. Now, again, I'm happy to hear that the Civil Service Commission has come around and started making these changes, but to be very clear, they weren't, and they were very resistant prior to this. I'm happy that things have gotten better and improved, and I expect that will continue to go forward. It seems as though they've had, their tune has changed, which is good news. But that's why I brought the resolution forward, is to make sure that this happens and to make sure that they're reporting back to us on a regular basis to ensure that we don't get to May and say, oh no, why haven't we done this? And so we'll have those regular updates over the next 30 and 60 days.
Further questions or comments?
Mayor.
Councilmember McConnell.
Thank you, sir. I just feel the need to clarify something that was just said. The things that we're discussing here and are in this resolution were happening because the Civil Service Commission has been working in good faith with the consent decree monitor and our representatives on staff that have been working with them as well. So I support the direction that this is all moving in, but it wasn't because of this resolution, because ultimately they don't have to do what council tells them to do. We don't have any authority over the Civil Service Commission in this direct sense. We can pass a resolution saying that we would like to see you do this, and that's great. But ultimately, what's actually making this happen is the commissioners doing their job, working with the consent decree monitor to ensure that we don't all end up being penalized. The city doesn't end up being penalized for coming out of compliance. So I have full confidence that the consent decree monitor and the commissioners understand the responsibility before them, and that we'll reach substantial compliance on this issue. I support the direction of this resolution, but I don't think the resolution had anything to do with that. I think that has to do with the folks who are appointed on this body, understanding the task before them and moving in that direction.
Further discussion or questions? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of item number 11B. I'm sorry, number 11A. Call for the question.
Mayor, I don't believe we got a motion and a second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mayor,
Motion is in order. Councilmember Zvonek.
Motion to approve item 11A.
Moved by Councilmember Zvonek, seconded by?
Jurinsky.
Second by Councilmember Jurinsky to approve item number 11A. Any further discussion? Seeing none, call for the question on the adoption of 11A.
The motion passes to adopt Resolution 2022-236.
Clerk, now please read the title to item number 11B.
Item 11B is Resolution 2022-237, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Aurora, Colorado, to modify the rules of order and procedure for the Aurora, Colorado City Council regarding the start time for regular City Council meetings. And Mayor, we do have a few individuals from the public that would like to speak.
Very well, proceed, please.
Okay, Linda Servey.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for allowing us to speak on this issue today. I think that one of the things we should consider about this time change is how sprawling the city of Aurora is and how many people work within the metro area as opposed to just within the confines of a certain area of the city. To move this earlier is really putting participation out of the hands of many people who might like to come here and speak to you in person. I personally am retired. I am a resident, and I've been here for 28 years. One of the problems that I had just getting here tonight had to do with the traffic. And I live near Utah Park. It's not that far for me to come. But I sat through 4 different traffic lights 2 times just because of the traffic. And this is getting to be even more serious problem. So having our city council meetings earlier is causing a lot of people who do a traditional 9 to 5, 8 to 5 job to have a hardship in order to be able to be here. And since we're also considering some other things like the phone-in participation, that's even more difficult. So I would urge you to vote no on this. Thank you.
And then we do have a few individuals on the public call-in line.
Pat, go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, this is Pat. I'm calling tonight to talk about changing the start time of the council meetings to 6 p.m. instead of 6:30. I was curious. I was wondering if any of the council members have had an opportunity to ask their constituents if they would approve of an earlier start time. Since citizens are no longer permitted to testify before council at the end of the meeting, it makes it almost impossible for many people to sign up to speak at 6 p.m. You would think council members would try to make it easier to testify before the council, not harder. Thank you for your time.
Arnie, go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Mayor and council members, I think this is a fascist move on your part, trying to cut off participation by residents of the city who you don't like to listen to begin with. I've been involved in city council meetings for over 40 years. Every year, the meetings have started at 6:30. Never have they started earlier. Never have they started later. And you said that you made reference in the backup to the minutes of the study session of November 21st, 2022. However, there aren't any study session minutes available on the city's website. So how the hell can we know what's going on? Unless we were watching the study session. And I'm caring for an ailing wife who's dying, and I didn't have time to watch a study session. This is taking away our freedom to address the city council. The Gettysburg Address states that the government of the people, by the people, for the people shall not perish from the earth. And if you are overturning our democracy, shame on you.
That was all.
And I don't think that should.
Sorry, Arnie, I didn't mean to cut you off. I wasn't speaking.
Councilmember Gardner.
Mayor Pro Tem Gardner.
Mayor Pro Tem Gardner.
Thank you. So yeah, this is a simple change to the meeting time from 6:30 to 6. And, you know, I want to address several of the comments. First of all, you know, I think it's actually rather disappointing that we have people in the public that assume 8 to 5 job is the only job times that exist. What about the thousands and thousands of our residents that work nighttime jobs, work service jobs? They can't come here at all. They work at night, so maybe we should move the council meetings to 9 a.m. in the morning. I say that somewhat rhetorically, but you know, we cannot focus our meeting times on when only one subset of our city works. That being said, we have a staff, a professional staff that works all day, in most cases 7, 8, 9 o'clock. This building's filled by then, and they're here all day. They're here sometimes till 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. And then, as we heard in our study session last week, many times they have to be back at work at 8 o'clock the next morning. And, you know, I think this is a way to respect their time. We're talking a change of 30 minutes, and to call that fascism is frankly absurd when, you know, Aurora has a longer public comment period than most any other city in Colorado. We allow unlimited public comment on any item on our agenda, not to mention the fact that this dais in front of council at a public invited to be heard is not the only way to address this council. We all meet regularly with constituents. We all can take emails. We have a variety of, we all have phone numbers. I assume all my colleagues have cell phones. We all have a variety of other ways that we can be communicated with. So to say that this is fascism and to quote the Declaration of Independence is absurd when we're talking about a 30-minute change in the meeting time. But again, I think this is respectful of our staff and the amount of time that they put into this job, especially on nights or on weeks where there is a nighttime council meeting. So with that, I'd ask for my colleagues' support.
Questions of the sponsor or questions of staff?
Mayor.
Councilmember McConnell.
Thank you, sir. And thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Gardner, for your explanation there. And I'm 100% with you in terms of respecting our staff time. And I'm wondering on that same vein, have you considered working with management to craft a comp time policy as opposed to moving our meetings even earlier in the day? Because I do have constituents for whom this will be a burden, not to mention this is a part-time job. Some of us have the privilege of putting full-time into it. But this may interfere with some of our current colleagues' schedules and future folks who want to run and serve their community as well. So I'm just wondering if you had taken some of that into consideration.
So a lot of our staff members don't necessarily have the opportunity to come in later. They have public-facing jobs, and their job is to serve the public. And so they can't necessarily come in later because we were late on a council meeting. And you know, to your point about the impact that this has on people, it also has impact the next day on the back end when we're here till 11, 12, 1 o'clock at night for our colleagues that work, but also for the members of the public that wish to comment. There's been several times where we are dealing with a multi-million-dollar water transaction, a highly controversial development issue at 11:30 or 12 o'clock at night, and we are saying to our residents, if you want to address us on this topic, here's your opportunity to do it, and I don't think that's respectful of our residents as well. And so I think this is a reasonable way to, this along with item 11C, a reasonable way to respect our staff, provide a more convenient time for the public to comment on high-profile issues and the issues that they want to comment on.
Further questions of staff or the applicant, or the,
Mayor?
I'm sorry, yes, sponsor or staff. Councilmember Drzinski.
Yeah, I just want to know if there's possibly any way to find middle ground on this. Is there any way on the agenda to maybe put public invited to be heard after the consent calendar and maybe find middle ground for everybody here? Is that, I don't know, city attorney, or if anybody can answer, is there any possible way that we can maybe meet in the middle here?
Further discussion.
Well, can I have an answer?
You know, you're asking staff to decide a policy that we have to decide? I'm not clear on what you're trying to do.
She's asking for legal advice.
Legal advice, of course that can be done. City attorney, go ahead and opine on something this simple.
And obviously, that can be done, and your next agenda item will be addressing that very issue.
Mayor?
Councilmember Coombs.
Point of order regarding decorum. You know, I think it's not fair or appropriate to insult someone for asking a question. And I think it's a good question. And I would support that proposal if that's on the table.
Further discussion.
Mayor?
Councilmember Bergen.
Yeah, I actually like the idea, because the idea is to still start at 6 o'clock, but yet move public invited a little bit later in the agenda, which would then maybe time it to be more like 6:30, 6:45 for the public to be able to get here if they're working. So I think it's a really good proposal. I know we can make those changes in our rules. So I don't know if this could be delayed, and then we can do that, or if we can do it tonight.
Well, question, City Attorney, can't this amend the proposal? Can't this be done as an amendment?
So, again, the amendment that you're talking about is the next agenda item rather than the time. So you're looking at changing the consent agenda calendar and reorganizing the items in the very next agenda item that you're going to talk about, that's a more appropriate place to do it than this agenda item.
Very well.
Mayor.
Further discussion?
Mayor?
Councilmember Gardner.
Yeah, God.
Mayor Pro Tem Gardner.
I'm supportive of what Councilmember Drinsky mentioned, and would consider that a friendly amendment, but I agree with the city attorney. I think that's more appropriate on item 11C, changing the time of the public invited to be heard to make it later on in the meeting to accommodate some of the concerns. So I would be okay with that as a friendly amendment on item 11C.
Further discussion?
Mayor.
Councilmember Combs.
So I do see the value in that and in Councilmember Drinsky trying to find middle ground. I guess my only concern is then when we're condensing so much into the consent agenda, if someone does want to pull something off of that consent agenda to comment, then that makes it hard for them to do that if we move it to after the consent agenda. So I still have some heartburn about starting at 6. Some days, like today, I can get here without difficulty at all, and then sometimes I'm coming from North Glen in a lot of traffic. And it is, and I've had to run down these stairs to announce that I'm present during roll call. So for me, it's concerning to me with respect to my work schedule, and if I'm having that experience, I know that we have constituents that are having that experience, and some of my constituents did reach out and say that they do not support moving this earlier. So I think because their reasons were about people having the opportunity to comment, and this would mean that they then just wouldn't have the opportunity to comment on the consent agenda potentially, which is going to be the majority of the agenda under 11C, which I support. I think I still can't support this.
Further discussion on item number 11B.
Mayor.
Councilmember Gardner.
Conversely, I've had constituents reach out and say they don't appreciate the fact that they're having to comment on development issues that impact them at 11:30 or 12 o'clock at night. And so, we all have constituents, and it's a city of 400,000 people, and I don't think we should make decisions based upon 3 public comments.
Stand corrected, Mayor Pro Tem Gardner. Further discussion?
Mayor.
Councilmember Lawson.
Oh, no problem. So, what the issue that I have is that I know that Mayor Pro Tem Gardner has stated that we have more of a comment period than other cities. But even then, I still think that we're really taking away people's voices. We've eliminated the public invited to be heard on any issue. We've condensed that. Now we're trying to get rid of the 6:30, which is going to hinder people to get here, and then we may be getting rid of the call-in line. So I'm talking, when are people, I understand you're talking about your constituents, we all have constituents, but when are people actually going to be able to talk? Maybe some people don't want to talk by email or by call us. Maybe they want to get in front of the public, not only to address us as a council, but to also let the public know what's going on in the community. So, again, I work as well. It's hard. To me, you're kind of tying future council's hands as well who may want to run for office because they have a 6:30 time frame. People, I understand there's more people that work from night jobs, but there's a lot of people who work from 8 to 5, 5:30. Sometimes they can't even get here. So I won't be supporting this 6 o'clock time frame. I think that we should keep it at 6:30. We've already done enough in kind of removing public invited to be heard, and so I won't be supporting it.
Further discussion on 11B? Seeing none.
Mayor,
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Councilmember Bergen.
I guess to Mayor Pro Tem Gardner, is there any way to table this just to get a little bit more input from constituents? I'm in favor of amending it, but I guess to the earlier point, if it causes people to have to wait longer after someone pulls something from the consent calendar, it's almost like I'd rather have 11C before 11B to make my decision.
Mayor Pro Tem Gardner.
That's fine. We can continue it. This is an absurd conversation at this point. We're talking about 30 minutes. That's fine.
Further discussion?
So are we tabling it?
That
Mayor?
sounds like a motion to continue.
You have to make a motion to do that if you want to do that.
Mayor?
Councilmember Bergen.
Motion to table this to the next meeting?
It's been moved by Councilmember Bergen to table to the next regular meeting of the Aurora City Council. Is there a second?
Second.
So, and been seconded by Councilmember Coombs. Discussion on the Bergen amendment to the Gardner proposal. Seeing none, I call for the question on the Bergen amendment to table to the next regular meeting. Table item 11B to the next regular meeting.
Mayor,
Mayor votes yes.
the motion passes with 9 yes votes and 2 no votes. The no votes from Councilmember Zvonek and Councilmember Gardner to table this till the next regular council meeting.
Clerk, now please read the title to item number 11C.
Item 11C is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Aurora, Colorado to amend the rules of order and procedure for the Aurora, Colorado City Council regarding the parliamentary procedures, ordinances, resolutions, and amendments, Resolution 2022-238, and we do have individuals who want to speak on this.
Mayor Pro Tem Gardner.
Mayor, this is a rule change to amend our meeting schedule. Mayor Pro Tem Gardner, your microphone is off. Apologies, I can't hear you.
And Mayor, we have public also to speak, sorry.
Oh, I'm just standing correction. Very well, proceed with public invited to be heard.
Linda Servi.
Thank you again, Mayor and Council, for allowing me to speak. Again, I am a resident, and I've utilized this podium a few times over the years. I'm not here all the time. Most of the time when I'm speaking about something, it's because I'm trying to defend the rights of just ordinary people. And I think that the proposed changes to public invited to be heard and cutting down our meeting time, and we've already seen some narrowing of opportunities. We're living in very difficult times right now, and I think that one of the things that we need to do is listen to one another. I think that we need to hear different points of view. We talk about people being in silos where we only hear what we want to hear and we don't hear the opposition. And I think it's very important to have informed public comment and for our members to hear different sides, different points of view. I appreciate what Councilmember Jurinski said about trying to find a middle ground. I think we need to always keep in mind that we can find new and creative ways to do things. Opposition is often necessary to help us round out our thinking. We need to hear other people. We need to hear ideas expressed, sometimes with anger and impatience, sometimes with a lot of sorrow, and sometimes with a lot of anger because other people aren't listening in other places. I have tried emails and calling, and I have found some council members to be very good about replying to me in any format that I choose to try to address them. I've gone to town hall meetings, I've gone to chapter and, I'm sorry, what do you call your constituent meetings that you have maybe once a month? Some of you only have them once every 6 months or so. And usually I'm able to get, a pretty positive response in terms of courtesy, okay? However, many members on this council do not answer emails, do not answer telephone calls when a message is left. And many times there are derogatory comments made about people who might be presenting my position, even if not directed at me. So I find that to be off-putting. Oftentimes, too, we get boilerplate type replies to something. It's not good enough to just say XYZ, period, when it's not responsive to what I'm trying to get across. So democracy does require that voices be heard and listened to, and I always appreciate it when people show that. Thank you very much.
And then we have one individual on the call-in line.
Arnie, go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. And I agree with Ms. Survey. I have sent numerous emails to the entire council, other than the Democrats, and on most occasions, Councilman Jurinsky, and once or twice from Councilman Sundberg. I have had no response from anybody else. Positive, negative, nothing. Zero, zip. And if you read the agenda, unless you read it carefully, it says that you have to turn in your speaker slip to the city clerk prior to the item being discussed or prior to public invited to be heard, which as we know has been cut back drastically. There is no mention of the phone lines being discontinued. There are council members for health reasons. Councilmember Marcano now is calling in from home. Most of you have called in from home at one time or another. There's no reason that citizens should not be offered that same privilege to address city council. There are people who have illnesses. There are moms who are breastfeeding their babies and don't want to come out to meetings. There are all sorts of reasons why people call in on the phone. And taking that away, again, is fascist. And I don't care what Councilmember Gardner thinks of that remark. So again, the Gettysburg Address states the government of the people, by the people, for the people shall not perish from this earth. And this is exactly what you're trying to do by cutting off telephone comments. Thank you.
That was the last person. That was the last person.
Last one?
Mhm.
11B. Did you read the title?
Yes.
Okay, very well. Questions of the sponsor or staff on 11B?
Mayor?
I'm sorry, 11C.
Mayor?
Councilmember Berger.
Yes, just wanted to clarify that people, even though that this is reducing or putting things on the consent calendar, that there's still opportunity for the public to comment on them, and there's still opportunity for a council member to pull an item off to have discussion, correct? Or somebody?
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, it does not change anything about our consent calendar. As today, our consent calendar, any council member at any time before it's voted on can pull an item off consent. In addition, any member of the public can make a comment on any item on the consent calendar. So this does not change that in any way. It does not take away any ability for someone from the public to comment on an agenda item. In fact, despite what some of the comments tonight said, we have unlimited public comment on an agenda item. So if there was an item on consent agenda that 500 people wanted to show out and talk for, they could do that under our rules. There would be no restriction on that. This does not change that. All this simply does is put resolutions and appointments to boards and commissions. It moves them from their own spot on the agenda to underneath the consent calendar, but it does not change fundamentally or functionally how the consent calendar works.
Further questions of Mayor Pro Tem Gardner or staff?
Mayor?
Councilmember Jurinsky.
Yeah, so when this was first originally brought up, I was, I guess what you would call a junior member of council. And I had not, I hadn't been through enough meetings yet to really understand, what it meant, everything being on a consent calendar. And since then, I would like to point out to the public, there has been times where there's things that we go through that we've heard before. We've already passed it once, like say it's on a second reading or something like that, and we sit through it again. We sit through all of the staff presentations again. And as of right now, anything that passes unanimously on this council can be passed on a consent calendar as is. So fast forwarding to now, I do support this, and honestly, anybody who wants something pulled off, every council member will have the right to pull off anything they want, but if a member of the public wants something specifically pulled off, something they want to speak about, or reach out to any of us, before the meeting, and ask, for it to be pulled. I have now seen nights where we have sat here until midnight, after midnight, certainly on things that could have been passed on a consent calendar.
Further discussion?
Mayor.
I'm sorry, further questions of the sponsor or staff?
Mayor.
Councilmember Coons.
So I just wanted to clarify that if someone submits a speaker slip for something on the consent agenda, that gets pulled off the consent agenda, correct?
Correct, just like it does now, yep.
Yep. Okay, yeah, and I just, beyond that, want to say, that I actually appreciate that Mayor Pro Tem Gardner took the feedback of his colleagues to improve this. The initial version had kind of just everything being put onto consent unless it was pulled off. And this actually has introduction of ordinances not being on consent, so that at least that first reading, it has to be on the ordinances section of the agenda, and also removed a deadline for folks to pull the consent items that was before the meeting. So this way, if someone, gets a call from a constituent at 5:30 p.m. about an issue, they can pull that off the agenda. They don't have to do it by 1 p.m. on the day of the meeting. And the items that are asking to be put onto the consent agenda are things that typically already are passed unanimously. We seldom have issues with appointments to boards and commissions. When we do, we can pull those off and have a discussion. And then it's ordinances that were already passed unanimously, so that we're not going to have any likelihood, unless there's public comment, which folks can bring, to change those votes. And then resolutions, which, to Councilmember Jurinski's point, we did have a night where people were here to testify and to present an appeal to a zoning decision or a planning decision that impacted their community. And they ended up having to wait till, and actually it's happened more than once, they had to wait till extremely late. In the one case, we had 31 resolutions, and most of them were identical. They were like business improvement district plan approvals that were being run through really quickly, voted on unanimously, and no discussion. And so I think this actually enables better participation, because it lets people have the time to talk about the things that they want to talk about without setting arbitrary deadlines or making major things like introduction of ordinances go on to the consent calendar. So thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Gardner, for, for taking that feedback and for making those changes, and I'm going to support this.
Further questions of Mayor Pro Tem or of staff? Seeing none, a motion is in order.
Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Motion to approve item 11C.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by?
Jurinski.
Seconded by?
Jurinski.
Councilmember Jurinski to approve item number 11C. Further discussion?
Mayor.
Councilmember Cano.
Thank you, sir. And I just want to start by echoing Councilmember Coombs's comments. Mayor Pro Tem Gardner, I do appreciate you taking our feedback into consideration and making some substantive changes to this proposal. But I also want to address a lot of the folks who have called in and written us who are concerned about the phone line. I'm not exactly sure how this item got associated with the phone line, but I do want to say that several of us have expressed our dissatisfaction to the city manager about ending our phone service. Just so you all know, I've been told it's, I think, a $2,000 a month contract currently to maintain the public comment line with the contractor. I feel like that's a little steep, and that's probably something that we could do in-house. But above all, I don't think that we should be getting rid of a call-in service for our residents. As one of my constituents, Mr. Schultz, mentioned earlier, I'm joining you all tonight remotely. Several of, or not all of, actually all of us, due to the pandemic, have been able to participate remotely. And I think that that's an important amenity that we continue to offer to our residents. I know that there are ways that we can move this service in-house, and it is my strong urging to city management, and I would hope that all of my colleagues agree, that we find a way to preserve that service, because hearing from our constituents is one of the most important things that we do in our positions here. And as has been mentioned, some of us are a lot easier to get a hold of than others. So sometimes council meetings are the only way people get a chance to talk to all of us at once. But I just want you all to understand that this specific item that we're talking about has no direct connection to the cessation of a public comment line, and it is my hope that that is something that we'll be able to preserve as an amenity to our residents in perpetuity.
Discussion. Seeing none, the question before us is adoption of item number 11C. Call for the question.
The motion passes to adopt Resolution 2022-238.
Time is now 7:26. Council will stand in recess until 7:35.
Members of the public who would like to speak on an ordinance and have not already spoken to an operator, press star 3 before the item is called by the clerk. For those watching on Channel 8, call 855-695-3475 to be connected, and then press star 3. Council is taking a short break to allow any additional speakers to sign up. Please be patient and stay on the line until the operator is able to take down your information.
The regular meeting of the Aurora City Council is now back in session. Will the clerk please read the title to item number 12A?
Item 12A is ordinance 2022-74, public hearing for consideration of an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Aurora, Colorado, rezoning a parcel of land measuring 22 acres more or less at the northeast corner of 6th Avenue and Airport Boulevard from mixed-use corridor zone district to business tech zone district and amending the zoning map accordingly.
Public hearing is now open. A presentation by staff.
Very briefly, Janine Rustad, the Director of Planning and Development Services. As noted, this is a second reading of 22-acre rezone at the northeast corner of Airport Boulevard and 6th Avenue. It's from MUC, Mixed-Use Corridor, to the I-1 Business Tech. As was mentioned previously at the previous hearing, the Buckley Space Force, this has been referred to Buckley Space Force Station, and they have expressed no concerns. The I-1 zone typically has lower intensity uses, which is compatible with the abutting APZ and I-1 zoning. The Planning Commission recommended approval and supported the comp plan designation, Innovation Campus, which supports light industrial use. And finally, covenants on the property placed by Buckley before the property sold limit the intensity of the use, so this makes it more compatible. Available for any questions.
Presentation by the applicant? Presentation by the applicant.
The city is putting forth this proposal.
Understood. Is there anybody who wishes to be heard?
No.
Public hearing is now closed. Questions of staff? Seeing none, motion is in order.
Mayor, motion to approve 12A.
It's been moved by the Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by
Coombs.
Councilmember Coombs to approve item number 12A. Further discussion? Seeing none, call for the question on the adoption of 12A.
Councilmember Jones, thank you. The motion passes to adopt ordinance 2022-74.
Will the clerk now please read the title to item number 12B?
Item 12B is ordinance 2022-75, public hearing for consideration of an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Aurora, Colorado, amending Chapter 146 of the City Code to create a definition for data centers and to allow data centers as a conditional and permitted use in individual industrial zoning districts.
Public hearing is now open. Presentation by the applicant. By zone, by staff.
Janine Rustad, Director of Planning and Development Services. This is a second reading of a UDO amendment. The amendment is to add the use of data centers to the APZ zone district in addition to other districts the use is currently permitted in. Accompanied with this amendment is reducing the parking from 4 per 1,000 to 1 per peak time employee, consistent with the this use. Available for any questions.
I do have a question. Is on some of these data centers, they're a large footprint with few employees, but is there something afoot to do a second level that could have greater density in terms of employees?
If they had something other than data center on a second level, then I will also refer to legal counsel. I believe that they would have to meet the parking for both of those uses.
Mr. Money.
And I think that would be reasonable. And from what I've heard, these data centers are one level.
Very well. Is there anybody who wishes to be heard?
No.
Mayor.
Councilmember Bergen.
Yes, so this is at the end of Buckley, at the runway, right? Is this one, or am I on a?
This is a UDO change.
Right, it's a UDO change, but isn't it located next to Buckley?
No,
it's anywhere in the city. Yeah.
Oh.
It's applies generally.
Oh.
Not one particular.
Not one particular. Okay, thank you.
Public hearing is now closed. I'm sorry. Okay. Question. Are there any questions of staff? Seeing none, public hearing is now closed. Motion is in order.
Mayor.
Councilmember McConnell.
Thank you, sir. Move to approve 12B.
Moved by Councilmember O'Connell, seconded by
Gardner?
Mayor Pro Tem Gardner to approve item number 12B. Discussion? Seeing no further discussion, the question before us is the adoption of item number 12B. Call for the question.
The motion passes to adopt ordinance 2022-75.
Clerk, now please read the title to item number 12A.
Item 14A is
14A.
introduction of ordinance 2022-76, an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale by the City of Aurora, Colorado, acting by and through its utility enterprise of first lien sewer revenue bonds, Series 2023, in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $46 million for the purpose of financing in whole or in part the cost of additions and improvements to the sewer system operated by the utility enterprise, pledging certain funds and revenues of the enterprise to the payment of such bonds, prescribing the form of such bonds, and providing other detail in connection therewith.
Brief presentation by staff.
Good evening, Teresa Sedmak, City Treasurer. I'm here to introduce the ordinance authorizing the issuance of sewer revenue bonds for the purpose of financing the acquisition and construction of collector and pipeline improvements to the city's sewer system. The ordinance allows for the issuance of a maximum of $46 million, a maximum term of 30 years, and a maximum hopefully you're hearing me, and a maximum net effective interest cost of 5.5%. Since the submission of the original ordinance, three minor modifications have been made to the document. These changes are, we inserted the effective date of February 10th, 2023 to allow for the 30-day period after the second reading. In Section 204, we modified the bond details such that the minimum denomination of bonds, if privately placed, was changed from 100,000 to 500,000, which is industry standard, and the inclusion of the fact that if the bonds are privately placed, QSIP numbers will not be applied for or used. QSIP stands for Committee on Uniform Securities Identification Procedures, and a QSIP number is a unique identification number assigned to publicly issued securities. If they are not publicly issued, they typically do not have a QSIP. These changes are non-substantive in nature and do not materially change the content of the ordinance. The bonds will be repaid through net revenues of the sewer system. It is expected that the bonds will be issued through competitive sale on February 14th, closed on the 23rd. In addition to the ordinance, Council has been provided with a draft preliminary official statement, or POS, related to the bonds. That is very much a working document and would be finalized before the bonds are offered to investors. I am happy to answer any questions you may have in this regard.
Questions of staff? Seeing none, thank you very much. Motion is in order.
Mayor, motion to approve 14A.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by
Sundberg.
Councilmember Sundberg to approve item number 14A. Discussion? Seeing no discussion, the question before us is the adoption of item number 14A. Call for the question.
The motion passes to adopt ordinance 2022-76.
Thank you.
Will the clerk now please read the title to item number 14B?
Item 14B is ordinance 2022-77, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Aurora, Colorado, repealing Article 5, Employer Occupational Privilege Tax, and Article 6, Employee Occupational Privilege Tax, and Chapter 130 of the City Code of the City of Aurora and other related matters. Mayor, there's one person on the call-in line to speak.
Please proceed.
Am I on?
Yes.
Hi, it's me again. So anyway, check this out, right? I don't care who sponsored this bill. We're going to talk about, you guys sit on a council. You should have went to college. You know basic economics, right? So based on this, tell me exactly what you're going to do with all these growing programs and investments in the roads and everything you're doing when you're just going to decide to take $6 million a year and throw it out the window. Because you know as well as I do, if you get rid of this tax, the city is never going to approve you to get that money back. So don't play it like this is something that can't be done, because last Monday in the study session, Councilwoman Lawson tried to propose a compromise instead, and you could very easily find an amenable compromise to change what it is that Councilwoman Jurenski finds offensive about the way that these places tend to contact and harass people, while also simultaneously not wasting the city's tax dollars, because you have a multitude of programs in your city, and that $6 million can be put anywhere you need it to, but not if you throw it all away. Thank you.
That was the only person.
Councilmember Jurenski.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is seeking to repeal the occupational privilege tax, which is literally a head tax in the city. And I would just like to point out very quickly that this tax was never created by the voters. So the voters never got, this was originally created by city staff, from what I found out. And what the gentleman on the call-in line literally just stated verbatim is, this is money that the city will never get back. If that's the case, then he feels very confident that if this were a ballot measure, and if this were put on a ballot and the people were able to vote on it and have a voice on this, it wouldn't pass. So that alone right there tells me that my colleagues should absolutely support this. With that, Mayor, you are the co-sponsor. I don't know if you want to say anything.
This, I think it's inappropriate from the standpoint of economic development policy to be taxing jobs that you're trying to create. And so I support this measure. It will not take effect until January 1, 2025, stand corrected, and that any time prior to that, should revenues not come in as anticipated, or simply that there be an economic downturn, or the demands on governments be such that the tax needs, that the majority on the council wants to either delay or repeal the tax cut, then they have the ability to do so. And so there is flexibility in terms of the current law, in the ability for council to amend any provision in this particular ordinance prior to the effective date. And so obviously once the effective date happens and the tax cut does occur, then it would have to go back to the voters to be reenacted.
Mayor?
Councilmember Bergen.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. You know, I had some concerns about this. I certainly do not want to have services cut, and I will make sure that we don't cut critical services. I'm supporting this because it is not effective, as the mayor just stated, until January of 2025. We have time to reevaluate the budget. We have time to incorporate new growth that is inevitably will come to the city with new opportunities. And I think, you know, just this is a tax on businesses and employees as well. And I think there's a better way of doing this. So I am in support of this ordinance.
Further discussion?
Mayor.
Councilmember Crooms.
So this takes money out of our budget, a budget that we continuously have to say, no, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do this. When we sit down to have our workshops, we choose not to provide certain services or pay for certain things for our constituents, or take out $36 million in debt to address services that we did not take care of for years and years. So from that standpoint, it's really unclear how we say we can afford to take what's now today $6 million out of our budget. In 2025, it actually will be more because we'll have more employees in the city. that are paying that tax, and their employers are paying that tax. So this is going to be a growing chunk that we take out of our budget while we still have billions of dollars in unfunded needs around infrastructure in our city. So I absolutely cannot support doing that. And there's no way to do it without cutting some services or some infrastructure. It's not fair to say to our constituents that we're going to cut taxes and no, we're not going to cut any services. It'll be okay. We'll figure it out. I think that we need to be honest and say, yeah, that's $6 million that we're not spending on you, our residents, in a coordinated way that could benefit you. And that we think $24 for you is more valuable, and $24 for your boss is more valuable to you than millions of dollars that the city can spend in a coordinated, beneficial way.
The budget is over $1 billion. We don't know if there's going to be any cuts or not. I mean, if revenue increases will offset the requirement to do any cuts at all. If, in fact, that doesn't materialize, again, we have the ability to either delay this particular tax cut on jobs, tax on jobs, or, in fact, we can repeal it altogether. So the notion that this will automatically lead to any cuts in government is inappropriate. I mean, I don't want to use that term, but I disagree with it.
Mayor?
Councilmember Zvonek.
Yeah, we're continuing to have the conversation about what this is going to take away from government, but what this is also doing is putting back or keeping in the pockets of taxpayers their money, which they'll be able to then put into consumable goods and sales tax that will come back to the city. And to the mayor's point, if we grow out of this, and I know we can speculate as to what it's going to look like, but if we grow out of this, there's a chance that this won't require any cuts. It might be a reduction of our increase, but it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to have to make any cuts. And I think that the responsible approach is being taken with this, and that it gives us some time to start building a plan towards eliminating what is a bad tax and a tax that very few cities in the state of Colorado actually have. It gives us a glide path to do it, to identify how we're going to do it, and, as the mayor pointed out, an option at any point in time by a majority of this council to change course, to change direction. But just like in so many of our conversations, we talk about what the impact is to government, but not what it is to taxpayers who support the government. And I think we have to remember that.
Further discussion.
Mayor.
Councilmember McConnell.
Thank you, sir. So I want to start by saying that the conservative majority on this council has repeatedly accused staff of making policy decisions for us. Some of you have personally attacked staff repeatedly along those lines. And I just want to point out that as written, this ordinance is directing staff to make policy decisions for us. It should be those interested in reducing revenue who are responsible for determining what programs and services they want to cut. Not city management, not the heads of our departments, but those of you who sign off on this nonsense, knowing full well what you're doing. And I just got to say, I've never heard my constituents reach out to me and say, hey, it would be really cool if you blew a $600 million hole in our general fund. We would really appreciate that. What I have heard from them is, we want a rec center. We want our streets to be safer. We want you to do something about childcare. And I can go on. And what doing this does is make it more difficult for us to hit all of those things. And even more. Our residents are asking us to do more, not less. This city has historically been run lean and mean, with responsible councils, even though I disagree with some of their policy decisions in the past. What y'all are doing here is just lighting the fuse on a bomb that does not need to be lit. You are choosing to do this for no good reason. And I just make it make sense. We already know that in the future, we're looking at shortfalls. Our budget manager, who has done an extremely good job, even though he says he caused some recessions, has pointed out to us repeatedly that with inflation, with the increased demand on services from our residents, with the continued sprawl that we keep getting, our costs are going to increase, and we are going to be running into the red ink within a few years. And this has been the story every year I have lived in Aurora. And I have seen councils go into austerity mode and make cuts to public services. I've seen libraries get shut down. I've seen our infrastructure backlog continue to grow, and not just roads, but all of our capital projects, parks, rec centers, libraries, you name it, because we never have the funding to do that, while our residents are asking us to do more. So what we're doing here, what we're discussing tonight, is an irresponsible ploy. Frankly, I think it's an election year stunt for next year so that y'all can campaign on cutting taxes, even though it is absolutely unnecessary and it's going to harm our residents, not the government. It's going to harm our residents because our residents depend on us to provide services and amenities for them so that they can live the best life that they can. And all of you so far have just talked about, well, maybe we'll get this, maybe we'll get that. Nonsense. You already know that a $2 tax for every employee and employer does not keep people from coming to our city. What keeps people from coming to our city is high quality education, it's affordable housing, it's a lack of childcare, and so on and so forth, not a $2 head tax. So shame on y'all and vote this down. This is irresponsible.
Further discussion.
Mayor.
Councilmember Jaworski.
Yeah, a couple things that I would like to say back to that. When we talk about constituents reaching out and saying, I want a rec center or I want a swimming pool. Well, again, I would like to talk about Colorado Springs, which is the second largest city in this state, 506,000 residents to our nearing 400,000. In comparison, they have 2 golf courses, 2 city-owned golf courses in Colorado Springs. We have 5. They have 4 rec centers for a population of 506,000 in Colorado Springs. When the Southeast Rec Center opens, we will have 5, if you include the Center for Active Adults, which is very much a rec center in this city. So when we talk about having services for our constituents, this city goes above and beyond. And we go above and beyond with a vacancy savings every year. And what we are looking at here, we're not, everybody, my colleagues who want to say shame on you, I say shame on you. I say shame on you for speaking to the public and trying to fear the public that they're going to lose any services. This city goes above and beyond comparatively for the size of our population. We offer multiple services. On top of that, we talk about, it's just $2 a month per employee. Well, I have here a stack of pay stubs because I did a little research on this. And what happens in this city, and I'm going to tell you who's affected most by this. It's the service industry, and it's single mothers that are working single fathers also, working 2 and 3 jobs. And let me tell you something, Councilmember Coombs, I encourage you to pull up both of your pay stubs, your council pay stub and your pay stub from the city of Aurora. You're being taxed twice. You're paying it twice. I just worked with Ryan Lance this week. Thank you, Ryan. Sent an email to stop that double taxing of Councilmember Sundberg and I. I pulled up pay stubs from 8 of my employees. 6 of them are paying it twice a month. 2 of them are paying it 3 times a month. So if this were in fact being taxed correctly, this wouldn't even be a $5.9 million budget cut. So I would like to point that out. And maybe no one cares. Maybe no one cares. They'll pay it 10 times a month. Maybe that's how they feel. But I'm just telling you, I'm sick and tired of my colleague, Councilmember Marcano, ruling this by fear. We literally go above and beyond in this city to offer services to our constituents. And Councilmember Zvonek just found a way to have a road maintenance plan without creating another tax. And again, I would just like to point out that if this tax was not created by the people in the first place, it was never voted on in the first place, and if it were to be a ballot measure, and if it were to go to a ballot today to be voted on, it would not pass.
Further discussion.
Mayor.
Councilmember Coombs.
So yes, I actually have looked at my pay stubs, and I'm aware that for each job I have, I pay $2 a month toward this tax. And yeah, actually, I am okay with that. But more importantly, sorry, I just lost the thread. You talked about vacancy savings. And what vacancy savings means is that we have employees doing the jobs of 2 or 3 employees. Vacancy savings doesn't mean we're just fine with the budget that we have, or with cutting our budget. It means that we are continuing to burn out our employees as we continue to ask them to do the jobs of 2 and 3 employees at a time. We don't have just a glut of positions. It's that we don't have enough people to fill them. And if we continue to cut our budget, we continue to rely on vacancy savings, we continue to lose more people. And we're creating a vicious cycle where we have employees that don't feel valued. We have employees that are burnt out or on the verge of burnout because of the excessive workload that they have. So I think that it would be really irresponsible of us to rely at all times on vacancy savings instead of trying to find a way to stop having those vacancies and making sure that our employees aren't doing multiple people's jobs. So yeah, and as far as this tax passing the voters, I think we could spend all day talking about the ways in which Tabor is problematic and does not help people to actually make good decisions in their best interest. But we don't have a say over whether or not Tabor exists. What we do have a say over is whether or not we are going to make sure that we continue to generate revenue to fund our employees so they're not burnt out, and to fund those excellent services that we've been able to provide to our residents without excess in spending.
Mayor?
Councilmember Jones.
Just to respond to that, the way we continue to generate revenue and find ways to generate revenue is to grow business in this city. It's with business growth, economic growth, and attracting more businesses and more jobs. That's how we generate more revenue for this city. It's not a head tax on the backs of businesses and on the backs of Aurora workers.
Further discussion?
Mayor.
Councilmember Lawson.
I think Councilmember Murillo is first.
Councilmember Lawson.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, great.
Thanks. I mean, I have a couple of thoughts. One, we consistently get awarded for being a, well-run, financially managed city. And part of that is around the diversification of our revenue streams. To me, if this passes, we are consolidating our reliance for our revenues as a city on sales tax, and that's already the largest source of revenue for the city. So to me, that's a departure of kind of that principle. So I am just not in support in that regard. Furthermore, I mean, I think just even the development of this conversation around the occupation privilege tax has been a departure from a good process from my time on council. This was brought forth kind of late in the budget conversation. It was typically, in that case, council members are required to identify the sources of revenue, or how are we going to make up for this? And we still have yet to identify where that missing $6 million is going to come from. So for me, that doesn't make any sense. And what we instead did, which I wholeheartedly disagree with, is we went through positions at our budget conversation that we felt it was okay to start eliminating, including the Office of the Independent Monitor and the DEI position. So if this is in lieu of that, I think that's totally the wrong move. and I didn't support it then. If we're going to try to justify this cut, which is what it is, in our budget, and justify it with the removal of critical positions that we need in the city, I mean, to me, that's another reason to not support it, in addition to the fact that we are moving away from the diversification of our revenue as a city, frankly. So for me, I'm not going to support this. Thank you.
Well, let me pledge you as the mayor that this is not effective until 1 January 2025. That, in fact, if the revenues are not there, that if there is not an offset through efficiency and through increased revenue, then I will put forward the amendment that will delay the implementation of this for a future date until there is the revenue available to be able to do this. Further discussion?
Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem Gardner.
Thank you, Mayor. So first, yeah, I agree actually with Councilmember Marcano. I do think it's a little disingenuous that, we passed a rule change earlier this year, basically saying that staff shouldn't have policy-making direction, and now we're giving them back to that in this. However, so I agree with the premise of his comment, but I still feel like, at the end of the day, council approves the budget. And so if the city manager brings forward a budget that we don't like, we certainly can make those changes. We're the ones that approve it. Traditionally, this body, at least in my 3+ years on council, has essentially rubber stamped the budget that's brought forward by the city manager for the most part. And so, that may not happen, but I think that's a way to make sure the policy-making direction stays with City Council, though I agree with the spirit of what Councilmember Marcano said. I do have a really big concern, though, with the double taxation piece. But I want to ask a question before I lose my mind. I'm assuming that is not allowed currently, and the double taxation should be corrected regardless of whether or not this ordinance passes. And further to that is what amount of the revenue that's brought in is coming from double taxation. I have 2 jobs, so I'm probably paying it twice. And so I'm just curious, and unlike Councilmember Coombs, I'm not okay paying it twice. I don't want to pay more taxes than I have to. So I'm curious, A, should that need to be corrected regardless of whether or not this passes? And B, how much revenue are we currently receiving from that?
Mayor, can I answer a portion of that?
Councilmember Jersky.
Yeah, so it's not supposed to be the way that it is. And if you go onto our website and you funnel through however many links you have to click to under tax and licensing to get to the occupational privilege tax page on the City of Aurora's website, it says at the very bottom, when you scroll to the very bottom of the page, it says that if you are employed more than once in the City of Aurora, hear me out, you are supposed to print this form and take it to your secondary employer and have them fill it out, and then your secondary employer is then supposed to communicate with your primary employer in the City of Aurora to notify them that they no longer have to take this tax out of your paycheck. There you go.
Mayor.
Just quickly, let me.
Hold. There was a second part.
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
How much revenue? They don't know.
Okay, let me.
They don't know.
Is that true?
I'm not in a position to answer.
Is there anybody that can answer that?
They do not know.
So Councilmember Gardner, again, going back to the way the tax is remitted, we don't track it by employee. We track it by gross number. So again, we're not tracking it on a unique employee identifier. So in order to keep the tax administratively simple, it's only 2 lines. How many employees? How much do you owe? That's what we do. So we're not tracking it on an per employee basis. If council wanted to do that, that form is going to be a lot longer than 2 lines.
Further discussion.
Mayor.
Councilmember Bergen.
Thank you. My mic on. I've been here on council for almost 8 years, and every single year that I have been on council, we have excess revenues when we do our budget workshop that council then decides how to spend it. Not only do we have it on that side of the general fund, but we also have it in marijuana tax revenues. And yes, we usually use those for one-time funds, but we can use them how we would like to use them. So when we talk about, we're going to be cutting services, I don't see that either. And if that were the case of a recession, as the mayor and Councilmember Jurenski have stated, we have the right to repeal that ordinance at that time. And I would definitely be in favor of repealing it if we ended up in a negative situation. But every year, our revenues have gone up. And I would say, as our population growth has gone up, we add more housing. As we add more housing, I don't know if you guys know, but it's not just sales tax from retail products that you purchase where we get revenue, but we get money from use taxes from building materials. So every time a roof is put on a house or anything is built on a house or a commercial building, millions and millions of dollars come into the city for use taxes. So there is revenue as population grows. And we do have the authority when we do our budget workshop to go through the budget to make sure that we are using our taxpayer monies in a responsible way. And I do think that we are, with growth, we're not going to have to consider cuts as has been stated. Also, just want to say Tabor is the taxpayer bill of rights. So what that means is that as residents of the state of Colorado, you have a right to give your input as to whether you want your taxes raised. And I think that's a good thing.
Mayor, could I speak, please?
Councilmember Lawson.
Okay, thank you, because I've been waiting. So a week ago at the study session, I presented an alternative proposal because I do not agree with the $6.1 million being cut out of the budget. I knew that Councilmember Jurenski had the votes, but I wouldn't be a lawmaker if I didn't do some type of compromise and let the public know that there is another alternative. And in this particular case, what I presented last week was not so much, it's still a budget, but it's $1.2 million. I know Councilmember Bergen stated that as the population grows, we're going to get revenue. But as the population grows and as we're meeting the need, we're going to have more needs of citizens in our community. That's going to grow in addition. So as we grow and as population grows, that the needs of the citizens is going to continue to grow. And I just think that even though we can repeal this, we can do everything, we still have to prepare for this, because in 2025, it may go and it may not, but we still have to prepare for it. I still think that we are tying the hands of future councils. I'm glad we have economists on this dais and they can predict the future. So that's great that we have economists and everybody knows what the economy is going to be like in the city of Aurora. We've gotten a lot of excess money because of the COVID. And so we may not have those revenues, and everybody's saying, oh, we're going to have rooftops, we're going to have this. But you still got to equate that there's going to be needs and services, and there's a potential, if not, that we're going to have to cut some of these services for people. $6.1 million is a lot of money, and we have to think about that, and I just don't think it's fiscally responsible. I think we're tying the hands of future councils. We're not going to be on council forever, all of us, but other councilors are going to have to make hard decisions. And so I will not support Councilmember Jurenski's proposal. I appreciate what she's trying to do because I understand what she's talking about, especially as it connects to small businesses. And I even proposed in my proposal that maybe with the $1.2 million, we could put it towards maybe medians, maybe something that actually goes towards businesses, instead of just taking $6.1 million out of the budget. So I will not be supporting it. I knew that my proposal wasn't going to go through. I asked staff if they could actually provide me an alternative or something that could be compromising. And I just think that we're making a fiscally irresponsible move. I don't care if we can cut it, we can do it. We're still going to have to figure out a way to supplement this $6.1 million. And we have so much stuff going on in this city, and it's only going to continue.
Let me correct the record. Again, by saying that this is conditional by virtue of the fact that council has the ability to revisit this anytime prior to 1 January 2025. And secondly, it does provide direction to staff. It takes off the table public safety, and it takes off the table any transportation-related spending in the budget, and leaves everything else to a 4% cut. With the ability for staff to vary that from department to department, but aggregate a 4% cut. And I call for the question. It's a motion.
Mayor?
Second.
Councilmember Drewinski.
Well, I've lost my motion to approve item 14B.
I just.
Second.
We never got a motion in a second for.
Yeah, it was never motion and second to begin with. I would like to motion
Oh, I'm sorry.
my own.
Okay. Councilmember Drewinski.
Yeah, Mayor, motion to approve item 14B.
It's been moved by Councilmember Drewinski, seconded by.
Zvonik.
Seconded by Councilmember Zvonik. And I renew my motion to call for the question.
Second.
It's moved by the mayor, seconded by Councilmember Zvonik. Call for the question on the motion to call for the question.
So the first one.
Mayor Kaufman?
Mayor votes yes.
Yes.
The motion passes with 7 yes votes, 4 no votes to end the debate and vote on the main motion.
Would the clerk please read the title number 17A?
No, Mayor, that was.
We have to vote on it now.
I'm sorry. Oh, God. Okay. Okay. To the adoption of item number 14B. Call for the question.
Councilmember Murillo? There is a tie vote, 5-5. Mayor, how would you like to vote?
Mayor votes yes.
The motion passes with 6 yes votes, 5 no votes. The no votes from Councilmember Medina, Marcano, Coombs, Lawson, and Murillo.
Clerk, now please read the title to item number 17A.
Item 17A is consideration of an amended and restated annexation agreement between the City of Aurora, Colorado and Sun Empire One LLC and Sun Empire Venture LLC.
Read presentation by staff.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I'm Jacob Cox, Manager of Development Assistance. The item before you is an amended and restated annexation agreement between the City of Aurora, Sun Empire One LLC, and Sun Empire Venture LLC. The property in question was originally annexed in 1990 and is governed by an underlying annexation agreement that's nearing its expiration. The developer of this property approached the city about amending the original agreement to address the expiration for the portion of land they own per city policy on adopting current annexation model language for such instances, and in collaboration with this developer, we're therefore proposing to amend and restate the annexation agreement to comply with the current model and making certain non-material changes to allow for the context of the property that's already within the city's jurisdiction. This amended agreement being proposed tonight follows current model language with some minor revisions to account for that context. The minor changes are as follows: to identify the property as a sub-area of a parcel already within city limits, subject to an existing agreement, eliminating references to provisions that would only apply to new annexation, updating and clarifying certain concepts related to the water utility, acknowledging that the groundwater rights have already been delivered to the city, acknowledgement that the property is in an existing metropolitan district, that the existing agreement between the property owner and Aurora Public Schools is in place, identifies specific sections of city code that will govern the terms of this agreement, and acknowledge that those terms will apply to any successors in interest. For context, the underlying property has a recently approved master plan. It is a commercial master plan with the underlying zoning of Airport District. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I do not have an outside presentation.
Questions to staff?
Mayor?
Councilmember Coombs.
So why in all the time that this annexation agreement has been in place, has there not been anything done other than zoning, adding a metro district? So essentially setting someone up to keep being able to make their profit, but not doing anything for the residents of our city with this land.
This land was a little bit, I think when this land was annexed in the 90s, it was a little bit further away from the infrastructure. Now that infrastructure being near the airport, kind of on the east side of 470, with the context of the industrial facilities that are going in on that side of 470, now it's more conducive for development. So that's why it hasn't happened in 30 years or so. And a lot of the agreements from this era had a 30 to 35-year expiration. So that's why we haven't seen this up to this point.
And, sorry, can I ask a follow-up?
Please proceed.
Why do we allow someone to have land annexed into the city zoned, put a metro district on it, and then sit on it for 30 years when it would otherwise be agricultural land? That seems like we're essentially subsidizing land speculation as a city, and are we continuing to do that with our annexation agreements?
I would say no. I think the recent annexations were very specific in terms of what the city's done for recent annexations. This one, I think the context is a little unique, but I can't speak to what the choices were in 1990. I would say it's not necessarily putting the city in a bad position to have this land in the city's jurisdiction for a commercial master plan.
Further discussion? Further questions of staff? Seeing none, motion is in order.
No, Mayor?
Councilmember McConnell.
Thank you, sir. Apologies for the delay. So thank you for the presentation. On kind of the same notes as Councilmember Coombs, I'm just curious, does it actually benefit the city to allow for land to be annexed into the city, zoned, the values increase as a result of that activity, which obviously benefits the landowner, but then subsequently increases the costs of development on that land, especially if the landowner is not the interested party for development. I don't think that that's a practice that we should be supporting or encouraging, quite frankly. I think that we should be supporting folks who bring us applications with a plan and are ready to actually get something underway as opposed to looking for a payday. So would it, what is the benefit exactly of allowing these kinds of things to happen? Because I am very disappointed this is 30 years in the making and nothing has changed.
I think in the context of this project, there actually is a project now, and we're trying to do this amendment of this agreement that's nearing its expiration so that we can have this as an underlying agreement to guide that development in terms of following the city's model. But there is a current master plan and a current site plan actually in process for this. So now this land actually is moving forward with development, to answer your question, I think, to your point there.
And let me just say that when in an annexation area looking to be annexed by the city, a developer can go forward with plans, but until the water infrastructure comes out there, there's really nothing that they can do. And they don't know how long it's going to take for that infrastructure to get out there, particularly for the water. Further discussion?
Mayor?
Councilmember Coombs.
So we actually have agreements around water infrastructure and reimbursing entities for water infrastructure when they want to build ahead of what the city was otherwise going to build. So for me, that's not really an excuse. I'm glad they're doing something now. But I think when we look back at our annexation agreements from the 90s, there were a lot of really, really bad ones. And I think you can agree on at least some of those that's true. That basically constituted just our council subsidizing land speculators and allowing land speculators to enrich themselves without any immediate benefit to the city. So again, I'm glad that our staff are being a little more circumspect at this point, but yeah, this is literally just annexation for the sake of land speculators, and that's disappointing, but since it currently has a plan, I think there's value in that.
Where is the land specifically relative to the Front Range or Spaceport?
This piece of land it's much further to the west. It's actually adjacent to Porteos Industrial District,
okay.
right along 56th, just west of 470. So there's a vicinity map in your backup materials.
So now it's relatively close to being able to link up.
Correct.
But
there's surrounding infrastructure
Yeah.
for this parcel. So I think the circumstances of it not being adjacent infrastructure are not in place for this property.
Sure.
It makes sense for development.
And it requires a certain critical mass of development, doesn't it, to make a water system effective efficiently, does it not?
So
you can't just be way out there and decide to extend out and then have the city reimburse you because the system's not going to work.
this one is well set up in terms of infrastructure.
Very well.
Site.
Further discussion? Motion is in order.
Mayor, motion to approve 17A.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by?
Bergen.
Second by Councilmember Bergen to approve item number 17A. Discussion? Seeing no further discussion, the question before us is adoption of item number 17A. Call for the question.
Mayor Kaufman?
Mayor votes yes.
The motion passes to adopt item 17A.
Will the clerk now please read the title to item number 19A?
Item 19A is consideration to appoint 2 members to the Aurora Immigrant and Refugee Commission.
Motion is in order.
Okay, Mayor.
Councilmember Coombs.
Motion to appoint Ashvina Patel and Christina Lizardi Hajibito to the Aurora Immigrant and Refugee Commission.
Further discussion? Does that, second? It's been moved by Councilmember Coombs, second by Councilmember Medina. Discussion? Seeing no discussion, call for the question on item number 17A. 19A.
Mayor Kaufman?
Mayor votes yes.
The motion passes to adopt item 19A.
Clerk, now please read the title to item number 19B.
Item 19B is the 2023 City Council meeting calendar.
Brief presentation.
Yes, this is the council meeting calendar for 2023. It sets the council meeting study sessions and workshops. It can be approved by council with a 2/3 vote, and during the year, if it needs to be amended, it will be amended with a 2/3 vote.
Motion is in order.
Mayor, I approve 19B.
It's been moved by Councilmember Lawson, seconded by
Bergen.
Councilmember Bergen. Discussion?
Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. For the January workshop, I'd like to propose changing the date of that to either the 21st of January or the 4th of February. I'm unavailable on that day. So wanted to see if my colleagues would be willing to change that.
Is there objection?
Either the 21st of January or the 4th of February.
And Mayor.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Thank you, sir. And Mayor Pro Tem Gardner, just for clarification, we're looking at version 3 revised, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Um,
I'm good with February.
I'm sorry, is there objection?
To February?
February 4th.
We have to choose.
February 4th? Is there objection? Seeing none, then without objection, it'd be February 4th. Further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of item. Did I get a first and a second? Motion is in order.
Mayor, I will, I did 19B with
Okay, you did. Okay,
amendments,
I'm sorry.
with Mayor Pro Tem's amendments added.
Right.
Okay, yes.
Okay. Has it been moved and seconded?
Yes.
Done. Okay, very well. Further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of item number 19B. Call for the question.
Mayor Kaufman?
Mayor votes yes.
Councilmember Drinsky? The motion passes to adopt the 2023 council meeting calendar with the winter workshop moved to February 4th.
Reports?
Mayor, we have one more item.
Oh, I'm sorry, item number 19C. Will the clerk now please read the title to item number 19C?
19C is consideration to approve an agreement to Article 17 between the City of Aurora, Colorado and the Fraternal Order of Police for the years 2023-2024.
Motion is in order.
Mayor.
Councilmember Coombs. Councilmember Bergen. Boy, I'm having trouble tonight.
Thank you. Motion to approve 19C.
Moved by Councilmember Bergen, seconded by?
Sundberg.
Seconded by Councilmember Sundberg to approve item number 19C. Discussion?
Mayor.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Thank you, sir. I just have a question for staff. What is pyramiding of overtime? If someone could clarify that for us, please.
So this was essentially that if you are essentially taking leave and taking overtime, that you're not, double and triple dipping to sort of take advantages of all the leave policies. So essentially, it's you only get paid once for the time worked.
Further discussion?
Mayor?
Councilmember Bergen.
Oh, me.
Councilmember Bergen.
I forgot to say waiver of reconsideration, please.
Very well. Further discussion? Seeing none, question before us is option number 19C. Call for the question.
Mayor Kaufman?
Mayor votes yes.
The motion passes to adopt item 19C.
No report from the mayor. Councilmember Lawson.
Thank you, Mayor. This week, the Senate, this is from the Federal, State, and Intergovernmental Relations Committee report. This week, the Senate will release a $1.7 trillion fiscal year 2023 spending package, capping off months of bipartisan negotiations. Lawmakers have until this Friday to pass the appropriations bill or another continuing resolution. The city's earmarks requests are included in the bill. Staff has sent via email to council the outcomes of the Colorado Municipal League Policy and Executive Committee meetings held earlier this month. The memo outlines policy positions taken by CML on a variety of legislative issues anticipated during the 2023 legislative session, which starts on January 9th. I also want to say I attended, along with some of my colleagues, the Shop with the Cop event. It was a very successful event, and I want to thank the APA and also the officers that attended. You really put a lot of smiles on those kids' faces, so it was nice to see that. And also, I just want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and look forward to next year and what's going on. So thank you, everybody.
Councilmember Gardner.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem Gardner.
Just wanted to echo what Councilmember Lawson said, attended Shop with the Cop. There were several council members there. The mayor was there as well. So just appreciate the Aurora Police Association Charitable Foundation putting that on. There was a lot of kids there, a lot of officers. It was really awesome. And then also wanted to mention later that day, myself, Councilmember Drinsky, and Councilmember Zvonek were at Story Time with the Grinch at the Towns Reach Library. So for those of you who weren't there, it was awesome. There were some bashful kids, but a really, really long line to see the Grinch. So that was a lot of fun. And then lastly, just Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. See everyone in 2023.
I just want to say I was also at the event with the Grinch and regret that I was mistaken. Okay, let's see. Okay, Councilmember Jurinsky.
Yeah, I mean, I echo everything with the Shop with the Cop, and I am just so appreciative of the Aurora Police Association for putting this on. It seems like it's gotten bigger and better. Also, with the Reading with the Grinch, I think Midori Clark and the library department realizes that next year it's got to be somewhere bigger. There was so many kids and so many people everywhere. I mean, poor Midori looked like a deer in the headlights. She said when she pulled up to the library, she thought that someone was having a neighborhood block party because of the cars that were all up and down the street. I want to wish everybody celebrating a happy second night of Hanukkah. This weekend, want to wish everyone a very Merry Christmas. And next week, it's 2023. Happy and healthy New Year to everybody.
And I believe that there will be a lighting of the menorah, and that is on Wednesday between 5:30 and 7:30 on the grounds. Am I correct on that date? Encourage everybody to come out for that. Councilmember Zvonek.
I'll be brief and just tell everybody Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays, and to city staff, thank you all. End of the year, we won't see you till next year, but just want to thank you for everything you do to help us, and to my colleagues, thank you all, and hope you have a Happy New Year.
Councilmember Murillo.
Thanks, Mayor. One just announcement real quick. There is a fundraiser December 30th from 3 to 7 p.m. at the Vintage Theater. It's hosted by the Black Parents, the Black Parents United Foundation. They are hoping to continue to serve the community, so just wanted to share that out so they can continue to keep doing the great work that they do. And other than that, happy holidays and a happy new year to everyone.
Councilmember Sundberg.
And in Auroraville, they say, the mayor's heart grew. And he had the strength of 10 mayors, plus 2. Anyway, I love the Grinch.
Okay.
Went to Shop with a Cop. It was a huge turnout. I've never seen so many participants involved. My business has contributed to that in the past, and this time I think they need to adjust it for inflation, though. Step Denver, we went and did a 2-hour visit of Step Denver, and what an encouraging program that is. When men are ready to seek sobriety, they rely on sobriety, work, accountability, and community, and they become tax-paying citizens and satisfied with their lives again and rebuilding with their families. Beautiful program. Attended the police graduation ceremony. I wish there were more, but I was there to support them, and what tremendous young group of 5 cadets, now police officers. Attended a Navy graduation ceremony at Buckley Space Force Base recently. 38-year-old gentleman retired from the Navy after a 20-year career. He earned his MBA in the process, a few financial investing certifications. This guy is ready to hit the road, and what a quality young man. I enjoyed seeing the flag ceremony, the watch ceremony, just a great thing to attend.
Councilmember Medina.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple things. Thanks to Chief Acevedo and bar officers for coming out and talking to one of the businesses there called Compare Restaurant and Grocer. So he talked about a lot of the things that they're going to help there. One of the things that we talked about is they are willing to have a table at their business, outside their business, to recruit police officers from the community. So we're going to be working on that in January to pick a day at a time to host that in the community. And again, have a great holiday, everyone. Thank you.
Councilmember McConnell.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just want to start with our next Ward 4 meeting, which is going to be on Thursday, January 12th at 6:30 p.m. at Colorado Early Colleges. We're going to have presentations followed by Q&A from Aurora Public Schools Director and Kiki, District 4 Arapahoe County Commissioner-elect Leslie Summey, and an introduction with interim APD Chief Art Acevedo. So it should be a very informative meeting, and I hope to see you all there in the new year. And I just want to wish everyone a happy Hanukkah, a Merry Christmas, a joyous Kwanzaa, a happy Festivus, and a very, very happy holiday season and a joyous new year. And I will see you all in 2023. Have a great night.
Councilmember Coombs.
Thank you, Mayor. So at our last meeting, I had forgot to mention that Councilmember Marcano and I were able to attend the ribbon cutting and grand opening for the first of its kind in the city of Aurora medication-assisted treatment facility. And they are really trying to operate on a model that will make sure that folks who need to get medication to become clean off of opiates have the ability to go and get that treatment at a wider range of hours than is often the case. A lot of facilities are only open during a narrow window in the morning, and that results in folks, once they start having jobs, being successful, building their lives back up, falling off and not having access to treatment anymore, and ending up becoming addicted again. So I think that it's really excellent that we have a facility in our city that's really creating that opportunity for folks to turn their lives around and continue to turn their lives around and be successful in that process. So I thank them for coming to our city and offering that opportunity to our residents. And then, of course, as everyone else has said, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah. I did not think of Festivus, even though someone else said it earlier, as well as a joyous Kwanzaa. But yes, wonderful holidays. Enjoy the new year, and very much look forward to seeing you all in the new year.
Councilmember Bergen.
Thank you, Mayor. And I also attended the Shop with a Cop on Shop with a Cop on Saturday the 10th. And it was really wonderful. Try to go every year. And just to see the children with the smiles on their faces as they get to spend, I think it's like $200 each, and they get to go with an officer throughout the Walmart store. And that was really fun. I also then went back in and decided to volunteer to help wrap
presents, because there was a long line to have the presents wrapped for them. So I did that. We also attended the holiday tree lighting. And then I also went to the STEP Denver with my two colleagues, Councilmember Zvonek and Councilmember Sundberg. And that was really just really enlightening to see the program and how they have helped so many men with their addiction and be able to to get their lives back, and it's just very touching. Addiction is really something that is very challenging to overcome, and they were talking about the rules that they have in place and the work requirements, so forth. Obviously, they do work with them to be able to get to the point where they can go seek work. And it's really, truly amazing how many men have come out of that and moved on in their lives and been able to be responsible to their own families. So that was really great. And then E470 just wanted to, our last meeting, we were able to make a decision to hold our toll rates for 2023 to keep them the same as in 2022, which in 2022 we did reduce our rates. So those will be held steady in light of the economy and inflation. So lastly, just want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and Happy Holidays. And also just want to say, please reach out to those that might be struggling, because sometimes this is a really difficult time during the holidays for people. So, reach out to your neighbors and your friends and your family. And lastly, spend money in Aurora for your holiday spending. Don't go to Denver. Don't go to Park Meadows. That's it.
Seeing no further business before the Aurora City Council, meeting is adjourned.